Welcome back to another episode of Born to Bear It. This time we are going over the nitty-gritty of in vitro fertilization. So what is IVF? To boil it down, it's essentially taking your eggs and your hubby's sperm and mixing them in a lab. That's why it's called test tube baby, right? But what actually happens in the lab and what is in vitro, that's what we're covering today. So let's hop in. So in order for fertilization to take place outside of the body, the sperm and the eggs have to be collected. So the first thing that happens is it's called your stimulation medication or your stim month. So what that means is the woman will be taking lots and lots and lots of stimulating hormones or fertility medications and the goal is to stimulate your ovaries so that you create lots and lots of eggs. In a normal menstrual cycle, we produce one egg. Our follicle grows and poops out one egg. Well, the goal is in an IVF round is to collect as many eggs as possible to give yourself, obviously, more chances for success. So you are stimulating your ovaries to create lots and lots of follicles to produce lots and lots of eggs that can then be retrieved. And so to do that, you are, yes, injecting with needles, lots and lots of different hormones and fertility medications. And there are so many out there, but you really do feel like a scientist and you're putting together needles and having to read the right amount of medication to suck up in the needle. And there are like Q-cap needles, regular needles, screw on this cap or screw on this needle to draw up the medication and then take that head off and put a different needle on to inject. And then there are pens, there are auto inject pens. Like, it is crazy. And so the more research you can do, I would say the better. And my number one tip is have a nurse come over and help you for a while because it's really confusing, especially if you're not in the healthcare field. I had no idea what I was doing. So I had a few friends help us along the way. But the first thing along the IVF journey is your stim meds, taking lots of medication to stimulate your ovaries. While that's happening, you will have lots of checkups with your doctor. So you'll go in and they will do lots of vaginal ultrasounds to make sure that your follicles are growing and you have plenty of follicles that are being produced. And they'll monitor that as you are taking your stimulation medication. They'll also monitor some of your hormone levels. So they'll be taking some blood draws as well, but they're monitoring you throughout your stimulation medication process. And then you are essentially leading up to the big egg retrieval. And that is a procedure that you can be, at least I think I don't know. I was put out for this process because I know that I am a wimp. So I was like, yep, please put me under so that I don't know what's going on. So the doctor goes in with this long tube, right? And and your doctor will retrieve the eggs from your uterus. It was painful. So I hear, but I was out. For me, I just woke up after the whole thing, right? And one thing that can happen, unfortunately, it's called OHSS, and that's Ovarian Hyperstimulation Syndrome. And this occurs when a woman's ovaries swell and are overstimulated and they begin to leak fluid into the body, and it's really, really uncomfortable. Unfortunately, I did have this. Creates constipation, bloating, discomfort. I was knocked out for about 3 or 4 days. Not fun, but yes, because you're taking medication you're supposed to be stimulating your ovaries can be overstimulated and that can cause some issues. So you take stimulation medications for right around 2, 3, 4, a month of your at the beginning of your cycle there, right? And then about the time that you would be ovulating, you're injecting yourself with, it's called the trigger shot to tell your body, your follicles to release those eggs. And then the doctor goes in and sucks out all your eggs for the egg retrieval. And now here's where you have some options. Some women will choose to do a fresh transfer, so a fresh embryo transfer. Some women decide to do a frozen embryo transfer. So what that looks like is once the doctor retrieves your eggs, obviously your husband will have to give his sperm. They take the sperm and the egg and yes, they fertilize the egg with the sperm. mix them, and then they wait for several days for the embryos to mature. And they're looking for several things. As your embryos grow and mature, they're looking for certain cell counts and certain grades of your eggs and grades of embryos. And so they're looking for obviously top quality, and they're hoping that the embryo reaches a certain cell stage. And once the embryologist kind of keeps track of your embryos for right about 5 days, you can go in and then do a fresh transfer where they take a fresh embryo that was just fertilized and they implant it. So you would have your egg retrieval, your egg is being fertilized, and then you'd go back essentially 5 or 6 days later and have that embryo implanted. So it's a fresh transfer. Other women either choose to do or sometimes have to do a frozen transfer. Obviously, if your ovaries are overstimulated and you have that OHSS, you can't just implant an embryo, so you would have to wait a month to give your body, your ovaries especially, a chance to cool down. So some women have to do a frozen transfer. Also, those who choose to do a frozen transfer are sometimes choosing to get their embryos genetically tested, and in order to genetically test them, they have to be sent to a lab. It takes a lot longer, so you have to freeze your embryos and then give your body and your embryos some time. But whether you are doing a fresh or frozen transfer, you have to prepare your body for that transfer. And so similarly, you will take more medication, more injections. This time you're just preparing your uterine lining for an embryo, for a baby, and you want to give yourself the best possible chances for that embryo to stick and implant. To prepare yourself for transfer day, for implantation, instead, this time you will be doing a few different hormones, a few different injections, but you will be doing estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen helps build your uterine lining, make it nice and thick, and progesterone kind of does the same. They're just making sure that your uterine lining is nice and thick and your hormone levels are where they should be at the right point, at the right peak, so that hopefully when that embryo is implanted, you have the best chances for implantation and success. Just as you were monitored during your stimulation medication, you'll also be monitored while you're taking your meds for transfer. So while you're taking all those hormones, you'll go in for your vaginal ultrasounds to make sure that your lining is thickening up as it should, and you'll have lots of blood draws to make sure that your hormone levels are exactly where they should be for optimum results for transfer. And then it all leads up to that big day. And I don't know the specifics, but my nurse mentioned something about like there's a calculator out there and they enter like the day your period started, the day you started taking estrogen. Then that tells them the day you're supposed to start progesterone, and depending on whether you take it in the morning or the afternoon, it all calculates, and then they're like, boom, here's your transfer day. Here's when we need you to come in so we can transfer the embryo into your uterus. And then you go in, and it's very anticlimactic, right? Like I was like, oh, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna lay down. It's very uncomfortable though, because you have to have a full bladder so that they can put the ultrasound on your belly instead of transvaginally, because what's going transvaginally is the like tube with the actual embryo at the very end of the little thing. Anyway, so you lay there, you've got a full bladder, the doctor puts in the tube, and I'm picturing like, oh, I'll see the tube enter my uterus on the screen, and I'll see this little embryo just come out and plop down onto my lining, and it's just gonna be a magical moment, like, hey, little guy. Nope, you see nothing. The doctor even mentioned, like, if you blink, you'll miss it, and she was right. I'm like watching the screen very intently. I'm like, I'm not gonna miss it, I'm not gonna miss it. She's like, you'll see maybe a little flash of light. Saw nothing, literally nothing. I don't know how ultrasound techs understand what's going on the screen, but I just see a bunch of blurs. Anyway, the doctor does go in and transfer that embryo into your uterus, and then you do nothing, and you wait, and you relax. And so I came home and I laid on the couch all day. I binged Netflix. Sorry, my dog is being loud. And then you wait, and it is the horrible about 2-week wait. You wait anywhere from, stop, Artie. Here. You wait anywhere from about 7 to 10 days, and then they'll call you back in for a blood draw, and they will test your HCG hormone level and tell you if it was successful or not. They will give you your pregnancy result. And that's it. that is IVF in a nutshell. Very simply put, there's lots more to it. If you have questions, like if you are considering IVF, do your research. That is the one regret I have, is that I really didn't do a whole lot of research. I just kind of jumped into it because I was so excited and anxious and ready to just be pregnant. And it's a very hard process to navigate. And the more research you do, the better. The more videos you watch, the better. The more you know, the more questions you ask, all that good stuff, the better. So I hope this at least told you a little bit about like, yo, what's IVF? But if you have questions, let me know. That is in vitro fertilization. Thank you for watching. And as always, stay awesome.